What's up, Star Wars Unlimited fans? It's Loopy at Late Night Gaming, and I'm here with John Tatta. How you doing, John?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
And Michael Carlock. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
And both of you guys, dominated some green bean at the
Yep.
Orlando 5K. Michael, you placed 4th in the event.
Yep.
And then Tatta, you were 9th. So we're doing this series to try to help people. There's a lot of tournaments coming up on May 4th. And then also Store Champs are right around the corner in set 1. This is certainly one of the best decks in the format. And we want to go into it. But tell me how you found Star Wars Unlimited, though. I mean, what brought you to this game?
Well, for me, it was just kind of like a natural progression. I've played every Star Wars game I think that's ever come out. So, once this one was announced, I've started looking forward to it. I went through a phase where I played a bunch of Bandai games for the last few years. So as soon as this one came out, it was kind of an easy jump from that to, Star Wars.
Yeah, my memory serves when I messaged you about this interview. We might have had like some stuff from a long time ago,
Yeah.
from Destiny days. But what about you, Michael? What brought you to Star Wars Unlimited?
Star Wars Unlimited specifically. So I mean, I've grown up. I love Star Wars. Always, I think you saw some of the stuff in my room, but Unlimited specifically, backtracking, I fell in love with Marvel Champions. So I was starting to look around for like, oh man, wouldn't it be cool if there's a Star Wars LCG? Turns out there was. And then found out, oh hey, there's a new Star Wars card game coming out, and I was like, oh, it's not an LCG. And I won't lie, at first I was super disappointed, but I remembered it. And then fast forward, I was like, well, maybe a TCG wouldn't be too bad. I don't really want to spend the amount of money that I ended up spending, but turns out playing it, it sold it. Once I played one game, I was like, oh, shit.
And I really compliment Fantasy Flight on the design. I mean, it's not that they were trying to be the most innovative CCG on the planet. They were trying to make the best CCG on the planet. It feels good. There's less feel-bad moments than any other card game I played, right? You don't see finals being determined by not having land.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's a fun game. So if you have any
It's a great game.
interesting cards, I mean, check it out. So tell us about this deck, though. I mean, this deck has existed since Sabine was revealed, right? Because she's obviously an aggro leader. But what drew each of you to play Sabine, and specifically Green Sabine? We'll start with you, John.
So Sabine and Leia were probably two of the first decks that I built for this game. When I was much younger, playing Magic and other games, I always gravitated to Control. It's kind of funny. Over the last like 5 or 6 years, as I've been getting older, the longer you sit down, the more your back hurts. So I've kind of gravitated to like these fast decks like Sabine and Leia, and in other games I play, I'm like, man. So the faster I kill my opponent or lose, the more time I have to stand up and walk around. So that's kind of why I started playing, these type decks.
I felt that at a spiritual level, my friend.
Yeah.
And actually, I am a Vader player, myself, but I mean, the aggro matchup is not at all what I want to see at a tournament, but at least I know I'm going to get a bathroom break because, win or lose, it's going to go fast. Either I control her or I don't. So,
like my longest round in the event was like 35, 40 minutes maybe at most. And that was actually like the mirror matches I played were the ones that actually took the longest. So
how many of your matches went to mill?
0. Yeah.
0.
What about you, Michael? Why be a green bean?
Well, the real answer is kind of an awkward one. The real answer is I love playing Control, but I am a slow player. So the number of games that would go to time when I play Control, way too many. Well, then here comes this other character who's a lot faster, and then on occasion I can sit there for 5 minutes thinking about one decision, and it's when I'm playing Sabine. So shout out to all the people that played me in the tournament, and you were sitting there watching me think for a couple minutes. But that's the main reason why I ended up going with Sabine.
So on that point, I mean, what do you think the decisions are that make you think? What are the most important decisions in Star Wars Unlimited?
Well, it's math, right? I mean, it's all combat math. And Sabine, a lot of times you have to be thinking 2-3 turns ahead. Like, if I do X damage this turn, then probably do X damage plus X, or plus Y on the next turn. What's their life going to be at? There's just a lot of combat math. So every card that you play has the potential to have a lasting effect multiple turns ahead. So anytime you sit there and think for 2-3 minutes to play one card, it's not that you're stalling or you can't figure out what to play. So most of the time for me, it's like, okay, I'm doing math in my head. Like, if I play this 2-3 Saboteur, how much damage is it going to do over the next 2 turns? What's my opponent going to play next turn, and so on and so forth. So
yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And I mean, I was commenting to another player, I don't think this is the easiest deck in the format to pilot, as well as it can be piloted anyway, by any means, because there's a lot of little decisions and there's handcrafting that goes on in Star Wars Unlimited because you can resource any card.
yeah.
And I personally, I mean, I run into people that pick up the game. A lot of times they'll have this deck, and I'll have an extremely high win percentage. If I'm on the, KTOD, Discord streaming games, against one of you guys or Chrono or, one of the Sabine aces, it's an entirely different experience. What about you, Mike? Yeah. What kind of decisions actually give you pause, though? Because I think that's an important thing for people to understand what's important and what's not.
Yeah, sometimes you have the luxury of having too many good choices to keep, especially like for resourcing, and you kind of have to make a decision of the likelihood of a unit that's going to be alive for something like Rebel Assault or Metal Ceremony versus are you going to even have a target for Heroic Sacrifice? Like, there's a couple of stuff in terms of like pumps. Same with like Fleet Lieutenant. Sometimes it can be like overly exciting to have, look at all this extra damage I can do for my hand, but sometimes you're not going to have a unit to actually attack with, and then you're going to be really sad when you play a Fleet Lieutenant by itself or a Wing Leader by itself. Sometimes you have to make the choice of, I think I said this in my little description for my deck, but you kind of have to be respectful on occasion of your player, your opponent that you're facing. That they're going to make the right decision and kill something that you have, in which case your card is going to be less than optimal from the hand.
Right. And there's, some decks that are going to do that. There's some decks that aren't. Initiative certainly matters. We're going to go deep kind of into these cards and these decisions there. But, I mean, I think one weakness of the deck is a lot of the turn 2 plays can be situational. And you got to probably, make some tough calls there as to how greedy you're going to be. Right?
Yeah, like space or not space, or, do you want to play a 2-3 with Saboteur, like I said, or like a 3-3 or Sabine unit. There's a lot that goes into it. Like Michael was saying, it depends on the matchup too. Like, what kind of removal is your opponent playing? Just things like that.
Right. Let's get to the decks. All right. This is your list. John, why don't you just kind of talk about the deck and some of the big choices that you did as you came to this tournament, which was the biggest tournament in America by a long shot. High cash. Yeah. And you flew in, right? You traveled to this?
Yes. Yeah, I flew in from Pittsburgh. It's about a 2-hour flight, but Pittsburgh is a Spirit Airlines hub, so the flight was like $90 round trip, so it was basically nothing.
Right.
But the deck, so the way that I built mine, I took a lot of info and advice from the KTOD version, but I made some changes based on preference. I don't like to play 12 events. I know that a lot of their versions plays like 11 or 12 events, and while that's fine in some matchups, I think overall, I tend to just try to stick to around 9 or 10. So just starting with my list and the event package, I went with 2 of each of the regular pumps, the Metal Ceremony, Rebel Assault, and the Heroic Sac, with the 3 for cause. some lists play more. I think Michael might have played one or two more than me.
You might be thinking of Richard. Richard played all 12.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So some versions played like 11 to 12, like I said, but you know, I like to have more units, more choices with that. Going into those units, I went with the two R2s. That's something that I've had in and out for a while, but most recently it's been out. I saw that the KTOD guys put it back in, and their reasoning was pretty sound. With these control decks that are popping up now, you want to have guys that have big defense. So R2 having 4 defense is a pretty big deal, because if you have wing leader, you can put it at a takedown range pretty quickly. Something with 6 defense is very, very difficult to remove. Other than that, the early drops are pretty standard, I think, between the X-Wing, Sabine, A-Wing. I opted to play Rebel Pathfinder. I'm still a really big fan of Saboteur. Personally, I think Saboteur is like the best keyword for this kind of deck outside of like Overwhelm, obviously. It's just a lot of times the blue decks in particular, their game plan is to just put like a huge Sentinel out. And if you have cards like the Pathfinder and Fighters for Freedom, it's just really easy to sneak past that for some extra damage. And a lot of times even like 1, 2, 3 damage makes the difference in that matchup. And then the 2 Bright Hopes is one of the other differences, I think, from a lot of versions. Most versions, I think, keep it in the side. I wanted to play it main. I think most people just think it's because of the mirror match or like Leia or whatever, but honestly, it's not. Yes, it is good in those matchups, but again, it's a 6 defense ship. Like that is almost impossible for any deck to ever remove. So if you can ever like Fleet Lieutenant, Wing Leader it, like you're doing damage with it.
Yep.
Which again is all you ever really want. And then finally, one of the other big differences would be the attack pod. I personally don't like attack pod. I have never liked attack pod, but I keep talking myself into playing it. So, and we'll talk about that more later. But that's another big deviation, I think, from most lists.
Yep.
And then the sideboard, I think, is pretty standard. There's 1 or 2 cards that people might not play, but the Star Viper was one of the big things for me. That was like my my mirror tech was basically the Star Viper.
Right. And I mean, I think that in this tournament, anybody who didn't bring Fang Fighters, which is something that I've seen in Sabine lists, I mean, we definitely had a deck abusing Entrenched, or trying to abuse Entrenched.
Yeah, well, it's also really good against Childson too. So I played George Hudson round 6, and he had a turn. It was turn 4. Well, the 4 resource turn, I should say. This was game 2, so I had more than the Fang Fighters, and he played a Childson as a 5/5, and so my 4 resources, I used 1 to play the Spec Force on his guy, made my attacks, and then I ended the turn by playing Fang Fighter to take away 1 experience, and it made it a 4/4, which was a huge turn in the match, because then he couldn't just kill Sabine with his Childson. So just little things like that, just killing an XP, killing a shield, makes a really big difference.
Yep. And our clone trooper friend on the left there, I don't think we're talking about him separately, but
Wolf, yeah, I mean, he's just in there for like Iden and Krennic. It's really hard for Iden to deal with it like efficiently. They always have to go out of their way to make awkward trades with them. Usually what you do is on their 6th resource turn, when they want to deploy Iden, you just play Wolf. Like, it doesn't matter if he dies to whatever they do. They have to go out of their way to remove him, or else it just ends their whole game.
And 6 resources is also when an out of aspect vigilance plays, which is extremely common. Nowadays, my wife won a game last night, stopping a vigilance with a wolf.
Yeah.
on 6 resource.
Yeah, and like I played an Iden, I think it was like round 5, and like I said, we got to a 6 resource turn. He's at like 17, 18 damage at that point. Like, you just play Wolf, so that means they can't heal that turn, and they just die next turn.
Right.
So otherwise they play Iden, play OB, heal for 4, whatever, and the game's over. So he's pretty big in that matchup.
All right, Michael, here is your version. Tell us about your decision making on the differences. There are a few from John's list.
Yeah, just recency bias here, hindsight bias. The Wolf thing. So why am I not running Wolf? The main reason, it's not because I think he's bad or because he lacks value. It's just the number of times I play against some control players, and they would always have initiative on that flip turn. And most of them were smart enough to just play Vigilance before flipping Iden. And it got to the point where the number of times I wanted to get that anti-heal, I'd maybe stop 2 or 3 healing max instead of the actual 5, 6, 7, 8 on the flip turn that they would often get. They would just get the Vigilance off, they would kill something, or they would be able to make an opening or just Death Trooper it because they were holding. So Wolf didn't end up making the cut for my list. That being said, I still think he's good. In fact, he might even replace the Ewing reinforcements in a future version of this deck. So a couple of main differences between mine and John's list. I think the obvious ones are the number of events. We run the same, but I run 1 Rebel Assault, 2 Heroic Sacrifice, and 3 Metal Ceremonies. Why only 1 Rebel Assault? Great question. We were making some choices here to play around certain decks that we knew were going to be in the meta. Mainly the Blue Vader. Origins at my locals. There were some other good control players in the area. We were basically playing around the idea of not losing to them in game 1. That being said, this was an expensive choice because I did lose my 2 aggro matchups with other Sabines during Swiss. Rebel Assault is like the premier essential card in that matchup. I agree 100% with John on Rebel Pathfinder. Sometimes the simple 2/2/3, the 2-cost 2/3 with Saboteur, it doesn't seem exciting, but you don't necessarily need exciting to win games. I elected to not run Bright Hopes, and I'll kind of talk about that, I think, in a little bit when we into that in more detail. But yeah, also running the 2 R2s. The question was never if R2, it was always how many for me personally. And then the main other difference, I'm not a fan of attack pods. I couldn't convince myself to run them. Every time I had them in, I just kept wanting to take them out. So instead, I ran General Dodonnas and some other things in the sideboard. The Bright Hopes were in and out for different reasons, being in the main deck, being in the sideboard. And then the really cheeky Zeb in the sideboard, specifically and only for the mirror.
How did it play? I mean, that's my boy from Rebels, the Lasat.
It won me game 3 against Richard in Top Cut. So think about it like that. It was only one time that I got to play it, and it was for me the most important game. It got me into top 4.
And what I would say to this too, and I think Guy, who's kind of a fresh set of eyes to Star Wars Unlimited, somewhat, and actually took down this tournament. He had an excellent point about Star Wars Unlimited rewarding narrow niche cards with high payoffs.
Yeah.
Right? Because you can always resource, if it's the one thing and it's what brings you the match, I mean, that can do it. So, cheers on the Zeb play. I mean, if it actually brings you into the top 4, that's a pretty significant difference in payout.
Yeah,
I am personally not a fan of Zeb.
There's also a big downside here too. If someone's playing my version of the deck, it's absolute garbage. Like, it's terrible. Like if you're playing Dodonna and buffing everything, well, now suddenly it can't stay alive to make the trade and win. So yeah, it was definitely always a risky play and a risky choice.
Worked out in this.
Never worked out, right? Like Zeb is really good at in theory, and it did work out for Michael once, like you said, but 9 out of 10 times, like he's just gonna be super awkward. Like you usually want to use your ECL in the mirror match So what happens oftentimes is you either use it on like turn 2 with Fighters for Freedom, or you use it like on your 4 or 5 resource turn with K2 or Steadfast. Like those are basically the only acceptable times to ever use ECL in the mirror match. If you're doing something that's not that, it's probably wrong. So like Zeb just makes it so awkward because he doesn't have overwhelm, but when he works that one time out of 10, you feel so good and justified.
And I will confess, I think I cut him from my Hera casual deck, too, because he is slow. I mean, that is true, and I mean, I think that he's a board control unit in an aggro deck. I mean, that's what he is too, but I do think that there's a place. And what was that an Aggro Mirror? Was that when it was used?
Yeah, that was against Richard's Sabine command in game 3, and it was specifically because the perfect board setup happened, and he had his leader. I gave him a unit to target with K2 on turn 4 on the 4 resource turn, and I just took initiative and then immediately ECL'd and killed both his leader and a K2 because he, luckily for me, did not have a Metal Ceremony in hand.
There you go. All right. Well, let's talk about our droidy boy, R2. So both of you ran him. That's something that hasn't always been the case. Tell me about your decision making with bringing R2 to this tournament in this meta. Well, let me start with Michael.
R2 has always been in my aggro decks, for hero aggro decks. I've been playing R2 since before launch, and every version of like the previously non-discussed Sabine cunning that used to exist in everyone's lives and hearts and minds. He was always in there. When I switched to Leia, he was in there. When I switched over to Sabine off of Team Leia, he was still in there. And again, it was always a question of is it 2 or 3? And there were a couple of times where I tried playing without him, and I just always hated it when I would have that one extra resource that I could have used on another turn to drop an extra target for Rebel Assault, for Heroic Sacrifice, for Fleet Lieutenant. It's just always disappointing to not have that one little 4 health boy doing so much work.
All right.
I was also playing against a lot of people with Greedo, and R2 was just always clutch. Oh, you have 3 health? Yeah, are you sure you want to? Oh, look, you missed once again, not hitting an event to deal 2 damage to R2? Cool, now you have to deal with another 1 drop. And it always feels bad as an opponent to spend resources on a 1 drop.
Mm-hmm. So. What do you think, John?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I didn't really love him when the meta was like a ton of Boba Fett decks. He is fine against Boba Fett. He gets past Greedo. He can't be killed by Viper Pro Droid, so he is kind of a nuisance. But he's a little slow versus those decks when like a lot of times you want to go a little faster. So I just wasn't a huge fan of him. Once the meta went back to being these like blue control, like Iden, so on and so forth, I started to like him a lot more. Mostly because if you play him early, he's really hard to kill, and I would often try to wing leader him to just make him like impossible to kill, and then at that point all of your Rebel Assaults are live. Typically, Rebel Assault is very bad versus the blue decks, like to the point where like you're siding them out. But with R2 and Bright Hope, you can oftentimes stick like two units at one time and be able to use your salt, your metal ceremonies, so on and so forth. So on top of that, his secondary effect of being able to look at the top part of your deck is also a really big deal when you're trying to find all of your key cards for those matchups, like for Cause, K2. Like you want to find your reach cards, and he just finds them very quickly.
All right, and here is the Bright Hope. So I think that this is another card that wasn't in lists, and now, I mean, I think that it's seen in the top cut list and not so much in some of the ones that didn't. So, and both of you had access to it. Tell me about Bright Hope for you this tournament, Michael. I mean, did it pay off? Did you get some situations? Anything you recall about it?
So I mean, you really bring him into like Boba and the mirror. That being said, we made a specific choice here to not main deck the two, and the main reason is, for better or for worse, a theory that the better players were going to main deck it, and we were going to ignore that and play Dodonna instead.
Yep.
So that was my theory going into the tournament. That being said, it does a reasonable amount of work against the fire spray. Just forces actions. It also does support the Zeb play in the mirror, because you kind of want to get the opponent to lane dodge against you, and so you force a ground unit. They go space, you drop this, and then they're like, well, okay, crap, I have to go deal with you on ground, so I'll bring out the leader, play stuff in the ground arena, and then you're like, okay, here's the one time the value play you get out of Zeb.
Good stuff. How did it play for you, John?
It was crazy all day. Like every single matchup, this card was insane. It's impossible to ever get rid of if they don't have like power of the dark side, and this is your only card in play. It can't be takedown. They have to use something like Vanquish on it. Like it just always gets in for damage, and that's the main thing. It's very, very, very good. Every time I played it, I'm pretty sure I won the game.
How often did you use the when played ability, and why? Because I think there's some opportunities here.
You don't usually want to use the when play ability unless you just have the resources to just replay what whatever you bounced. I mean, I guess there's times you can bounce like Spec Force and like replay it and things like that, but if you're doing things like that, you're probably already winning. So I think it's kind of just whatever.
Right. I do think that I don't recall if it was this tournament or not. I did see it pull a Spec Force to get to a lethal later, because I mean if you have 5-6 resources that can kill the Sentinel, and you only have so many outs to that. All right.
I don't think I ever like actually bounced something with it, to be honest.
Okay. All right. So odd man out sometimes. I mean, where is Echo Base Defender in this deck right now?
So I cut it probably 2 weeks ago, maybe a week and a half ago, like a week before the tournament. Basically, I was just like, this card's not very good because it dies to everything. Like it dies to 2-drops in the mirror match. It dies to Viper Probe Droid. Like the whole evolution of this deck is like, okay, I want 4 defense guys like everywhere. So the defender only having 3 defense, it's like it was never that good. So it just got cut. Like it was the worst a 3-drop out of all of them.
What do you think?
And you never want to, like, you could argue that sometimes there are certain units you can ECL this into and it lives and then it gets more value, but it's like, would I rather ECL this over a K2? Probably not. Is it a bad card? No, but when it dies to like a 1-buffed Rebel Assaulted Spec Force in the mirror, or when it dies to a crafty smuggler with Shoot First, or when it dies to literally insert any other unit that's played turn 1, it feels awful. The reality is most people don't play Season Shore Trooper, which is the main thing that this absolutely crushes. And so instead, they're playing the 3 Viper Probe Droids or the 2 and the main deck Shoot First. This card is a great card on paper. In actuality, with the number of 3 attack units or 3 power units we have in the game, this card is just taking up space in a well-oiled machine otherwise.
Yeah, and as it goes away, I think some of the villain decks might adjust too, because
there's actually a weird, and this is like a weird thing to actually point out, but it does matter, is that it having Sentinel is actually kind of a downside sometimes, because it takes away any choices that your opponent has. Like they just have to attack it, and that's that. A lot of times people just misplay against you and they just won't attack your units. So something not having Sentinel is, that just makes them have more choices.
Yeah, it gives them the optimal decision basically right away. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Right. All right, Dodonners. I think you both played it. This was something that
I did not play it.
Oh, you did?
No, it's something that I wish I had, but you can't really play Dodonna and Attack Pod because like they kind of, I don't want to say they serve the same purpose because they don't, but they like that's what I would put in the Dodonnas for. And also, you can only play so many 4-drops. Like, I think 6 4-drops is probably the most you can possibly play reasonably without getting too clunky. And I was already playing, of course, 3K2 and 2 Bright Hopes main. So, if I would cut the attack pods, I would probably play like 1 Dodonna, maybe 2. But I'll let Michael take this one because he's a madman and played 3.
Yeah.
So there's the argument I only have for 3 is not because I think 3 is the optimal number. It's because when I want this card, I want this card, and when I don't, then yeah, of course I'm going to resource. I think one game I drew 2, and I'm like, yeah, okay, they're both getting resourced. But the reality is like when I want this card, I want to make my opponent misplay. I want my opponent to question all of their life choices because when this card comes out, it just like when they for instance, I mentioned playing Bright Hope into like space, right? But ultimately, your opponent is trying to stop you in space, and I'm like, cool. Realistically, one of the choices I made going into this tournament is expecting that a lot of players are going to have the Star Viper main or sideboarded in for game 2, game 3, and rather than give them units to attack in space, I just would flood the board on ground. And then rather than be like, oh, here's a Bright Hope on the 4 resource turn, if they're still, throwing in, oh yeah, they're attacking me and healing with Viper, I'm like, okay, that's cool. Here's a Dodonna, and now all of my units are going to hit for an extra 3 damage. So is it good at 3? That's maybe a debatable question. I think the reality is, when I wanted the card, I just wanted the consistency of 3.
Right.
It also, unfortunately, like better players also realize real quickly that they have to get rid of this, and sometimes that's fine for you too because you're going to heal 4 because they're going to attack it with their Boba.
Yeah, well, he's really hard to trade into as well. Like on that cost, like 4/4 is not easy to get rid of.
And I think this is, somewhat one of the things that separates wheat from the chaff in Sabine players, and we'll talk about the mirrors there. But I mean, people joke about, always base. Did you attack units at this tournament?
Yeah.
I mean, you never feel good doing it, but
right.
A lot of times there are situations where you kind of have to. Like Dodonna is one of those times where you have to. Fighters for Freedom's like another card that like you probably have to attack at some point.
Right.
So yeah, there's times.
You have ECL, right? So occasionally we do have to actually attack units.
Yes.
Well,
into Leia, you have to attack. You're
like at least once per game, you do have to attack.
Yes. And I don't know that we have actually a card for Steadfast. I mean, would you agree that the primary use of ECL is trying to overwhelm damage to push for this deck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Like, oftentimes it's just K2, which is great.
Yeah.
But the ideal times is it's Steadfast. And I feel like the games that you can ECL Steadfast, you win like 90% of the time. But, and in the mirror match, you almost never have the luxury of ECLing a Steadfast. Like it's almost always like K2 or Fighters for Freedom. At least in my experience, like I don't think I can ever hold out to do it to Steadfast. You have to be pretty far ahead to be able to do something like that.
So hypothetical question: you have your Sabine out. They have a Boba player has a Greedo and a Boba Fett leader out. Which do you attack with the ECL? Usually.
Well, I mean, you always want to kill their leader if you can. So, I mean, I know that, I guess life totals kind of depends. I mean, 6 overwhelms a lot, but, just kind of depends on how the game's going, I guess. Because if you don't kill Boba Fett, like, they will outrace you because they have so many resources on you at that point. But
yeah, if they're giving you the scenario by which you're allowed to attack them with steadfast over with ECL into a full health Boba, like, I'm gonna take that 9 times.
Yeah.
Yep.
I would believe.
Yep. And I think, except if they have, 19 damage at the base, in which case,
Yeah.
I can hit a grid
obviously, and it does. And I think that's the math that is Sabine Green, right? You're always kind of, going there and, pushing it, take the chances when you can.
Yeah.
All right. This card everybody knows because it's one of the signature cards of the deck. I mean, we don't need to talk about what it does, but tell me about what your decisions are when you see the cards from 4 Claws I believe in. I mean, you're highly likely to hit 3 or 4 with both of your decks, but what cards are you looking for?
Just
Italian.
Yeah, just more copies of this card, right? I mean,
Right.
you're looking for usually by the time you're playing this, you're either looking for more 4 causes or like K2s. It's very rare that I keep anything else that's not 4 cause or K2 unless I already have another 4 cause in my hand. Then oftentimes I'll just keep all 4 cards on top just so I'm guaranteed, the damage for the next turn. But
yeah, if you have the double, a little trick there is you hit for 4, cool, put all 4 back
on top. Yeah.
I do see a lot of players when they're using this, especially like at locals or maybe less experienced. If you don't see the cards that John already mentioned, you discard them, get rid of them. You don't need to be you don't want to be, what your next 2 turns are going to be draw wise. You don't need to be drawing Alliance X-Wing, right? Like, that's not what you're looking for. Like,
like there was one game where I kept a Spec Force because I was playing against a blue deck. Like I kept like Spec Force plus K2. Just it's very rare that you're like, man, I'm gonna put this Alliance X-Wing on top of my deck. Like,
right. And as somebody who plays a lot of Villain Blue, I mean, if somebody puts a pod on top of their deck, I mean, it makes me happy, because I think they just, put themselves away from their actual outs and, they're playing into takedown, so.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, just one more thing there, just because we said it earlier when we were chatting, but
yeah.
When you have certain board states, sometimes it's great to just tell your opponent that you're threatening lethal with a card that you're going to draw next turn. So, for instance, if I have a K2SO on board and I reveal a heroic sacrifice, oftentimes I'll just explain to my opponent visually by putting a said heroic sacrifice back on top of my deck. So now that they have to make a decision, because otherwise they're going to take 9 damage to the face. On occasion, you might keep a Rebel Assault because you have 4 units on board or something.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just you can make your opponent make choices. Like, you'll force them into choices by showing what you're going to put on top of your deck, especially in cases where it's not K2 or another 4 cause, because you should be putting a 4 cause on top of your deck. And then maybe this doesn't need to be said for higher level players, but for newer players, if your opponent has a Kanan Jarrus on board, don't put the card you want on top of your deck because they're going to attack and roll it. That's just a little tip, because I've seen it happen and it's heartbreaking because you're like, oh crap, that was obvious. But when you think about it in hindsight, but just think about, are you going to be able to actually draw that card immediately? If your opponent has 6 resources for vigilance, chances are you're just not going to get it.
You'd be surprised. I mean, I do play Turret, which Kanan's a mainstay of. You'd be surprised how many people, do exactly that.
Or just put like a 1 aspect symbol on top if there's a Kanan in play or something. But definitely don't put like something with multiple aspects. Like, oh man, I guess they're healing too.
And since we're at the masterclass, Kanan actually says discard a card for each Spectre in play. So if you run into a Hera, I mean, actually pay attention to that too. Because that one gets tricky, because I actually was, it was about a month ago that, it was a Hera deck, and they ran a Kanan into me. He's like, mill 2. I'm like, what? I actually I thought Kanan just said mill 1, but I mean, it actually pulls there. But I mean, you certainly don't want to let them get your 4 cause. All right. our boy Cassian's Counterpart. Um, how did this play in the deck first, and then I mean, there's some interesting things that you can do with this card, too, that we talked about before stream. So, how was K2 for you in the tournament?
Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, it does damage. Overall, it was great. We like it. We like threatening heroic sacrifice in the main deck. That's always fun. Dealing 9 to face is awesome. But there's also some fun things. It kills itself because it's unique, and that's actually in our favor here, because if your opponent entrenches this for X reason or another because they're not going to play a unit, you can just get the damage by playing another. You can also attack with it and then play another. Otherwise, if for newer players, they may not necessarily think about, oh wait, I can do 7 damage this turn.
And as a huge entrenched opponent, I mean, I play entrenched on my K2s. I mean, don't do that lightly to somebody else's K2 unless it's like the only thing that gives you a chance in the game, because you're giving up the ground arena.
I personally think K2 is the best card in the whole deck. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's an argument that can be made for several cards like Rebel Salsa and so forth, but K2 is the one card that, like, games that you draw it, your win percentage is so much higher than the games that you don't. Like, it's amazing with ECL. It's amazing with all of your pumps. Like, it's just amazing, period.
There's 7 sources of guaranteed damage in the deck. I mean, there's the 3 K2s, there's the 3 4 causes, and then there's Sabine herself. Right? I mean, everything else there's a way to control. So you should... I think it's a card that's really tough to resource too. I mean, you can have to...
Yeah, I will never resource K2 unless I'm, like, so far ahead that it just doesn't even matter.
Right. All right, so this is a board decision. We'll talk about sideboarding at this point too, but U-Wing Reinforcement, I think both of you had access to it. When do you use it?
I boarded it in quite a bit, actually, because I played against 5 blue decks, but I just find it really good into, like, Iden, Krennic. I don't board it in against Boba Fett because usually don't even get to 7 resources. The Vader blue matchup I didn't because I didn't think I even needed it. But it's just in there for, like, the Iden and Krennic type matchups. Like, it's probably good against Chirrut too. It's good against Han. It's just it's one of those cards where you don't always need it, but sometimes it's hard to deal the last, like, 3-4 damage to, like, a Chirrut, a Han, a Krennic, and Iden, and this just does it. If you have, like, one untapped unit in play and you play this card and find, like, Wing Leader plus Fleet Lieutenant or whatever, like, they're dead. Mm-hmm. So that's why it's in there for me.
Michael?
I didn't play it. Like, when I had it in I sideboarded it in, like, into, like, maybe 2 games. I played it 0 times during the tournament.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that's very enlightening, to me too, is probably playing some of the decks it's good against. I mean, when I have seen it do Spec First, Wing Leader, Fleet Lieutenant, when I had it blocked with a Sentinel, mm-hmm. That's kind of like the ideal draw from the U-Wing, too, but that's a game winning. And then, I mean, a lot of times if you have a Rebel Assault, I mean, that's a lot for any control deck to deal with. I mean, maybe Super Laser Blast takes care of it, but I mean, other than that, you can't control that much from one turn if it's a bunch of little small stuff.
And, like, I wouldn't fault someone for not playing this in their side. Like, I don't think it's necessary. I played it probably twice the entire tournament, but both times I played it was very good.
It's probably, I think it is, maybe they do get the vigilance off. They've kind of stabilized. I mean, it's one of the 2 things that might get you back in the game, right? Because Sabine is not a come from behind type deck.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Medal Ceremony. When do you keep it? When do you not? How many units do you need to use it?
I mean, 1. Yeah, I mean, 1 is all you really need. I've played it for 1 on, like, a Sabine leader plenty of times, but I don't have a whole lot to say about this card other than it's very, very good in every matchup. You won it in the mirror match, you won it against control. It's just a very solid card.
Yeah, on occasion, your opponent will give you the leeway to play this card for like full value, and they feel real bad for letting you do that. Like it's soul crushingly bad for them when you to get 3 experience tokens for free, and God forbid you actually have 2 of these in hand and you get 6 tokens out of it. Like your opponent's probably gonna scoop at that point.
Right. And
I wish I could say that never happens, but it absolutely still occasionally happens. Like it's not amazing enough, but when it does happen, it's like
it's worth pointing out that it's very, very good on your ECL turn. Because those are the turns where you attack with 2, 3 units, right? So there's a lot of the times, like going back to where I was saying, you want to ECL the Fighters for Freedom a lot. It's really good on that turn as well, like turn 2, when you're like attack with your 2-drop, ECL Fighters for Freedom, play Metal Ceremony, and then like you're pretty far ahead.
Yep. Yeah, it also feels real good when you Fleet Lieutenant ECL on occasion. You don't do that too often, but when you do, there's 2 attacks, and then here you could play Metal Ceremony while still often being able to take the initiative, which is a big deal in a lot of cases.
And as somebody who plays a lot of Force Throw decks, I mean,
don't target.
Yeah.
Just don't do it.
Mm-hmm. All right, so matchups. First off, Boba Fett. What are you guys thinking? What's your game plan into Boba Fett ECL? Not yellow.
Michael,
don't give them a Star Viper target is my game plan. That I don't know how long that strategy is going to last. Now that people know that's a strategy in general, but basically just not giving them free 3-for-1 kills with 7 Fleet Defender. Like that feels horrible. Would I love to be able to take domination in space against Boba player to win the game? Absolutely. But if they have the Viper and they have the ECL, it's very hard to win when they can just ECL and kill everything while healing.
I kind of have a different game plan there. I do agree with what Michael's saying, but it matters a lot who goes first. If I win the roll and go first, I will almost always, no matter what, go space. And the reason for that is if they want to do a turn 2 ECL to kill the X-Wing or the A-Wing, they're not healing. They don't have the the turn marker. And like, if you can follow that up with Fighters for Freedom in the ground arena after they ECL you, you kind of take over the game in the ground. That totally shuts off their ramp because now they don't have ECL. They can't resupply, or else they fall way too far behind. They don't have any good answer for Fighters for Freedom at that point, and you can kind of just take over the game in the ground. It's almost like baiting them to use their ECL. As long as you can maintain going first every round, their Star Viper is not going to do anything the whole game.
This is also assuming that they don't play a ground unit, right? Like
right. Yeah.
Because if they take initiative and then whack you, they are going to get.
Yeah, like it's really not a big deal as long as you have like a 4 defense unit, like Fighters for Freedom. Like that's how, like, I played Andrew Cox round 7, and that's basically how our games went. Like game 1, I think he won the roll. Game 1, he crushed me. Like, wasn't even close. Game 2, me going first. I think that's basically what happened. Is that like I went space, he did his thing. I went to the ground. He couldn't keep up with my 4 defense guys. He couldn't ramp, and then I, crushed him. And then game 3, with him back on the play, we went back and forth a lot, but he was able to pull ahead in the end because he had like a combo of the ECL on like a 7 Fleet Defender, and also had to shoot first for his Greedo to take out my 4 defense unit. And those are the games where you lose. Like, you can't really help that.
What about the mirrors? Like a Sabine Green mirror? I mean, what are you trying to do?
I mean, there's not a whole lot to say. Like,
win the coin flip.
Well, I mean, I don't think that even matters that much. I mean, it does. Like, you do want to go first, but like, there's not a lot of room to outplay your opponent if you're both at a relatively equal skill level. Um, it'll always almost come down to who has more pumps, right? Like Rebel Assault Medal Ceremony, because that's what pushes through. Because what happens is like you're just trading blows back and forth, right? Like I'm hitting you for 3, you hit me for 4, I hit you for 5, you hit me for whatever. So it just comes down to like who has the Rebel Assault, who has multiple medal ceremonies, just things like that. It is interesting, and you have it up on the screen here, like to ping or not to ping. Like I'm on team no ping. Like I never ping in the mirror unless like they miss a drop or under drop or something crazy. Because I don't ever want to lose like going first. So, you know, I just don't like pinging. That's the mirror match to me.
What about you, Michael? Are you on team ping or no ping?
In the mirror, I mean, yeah, you want initiative because you want to get off Fleet Lieutenant, you want to get off your pumps. I mean, that's just kind of like, it goes kind of, I feel like, without saying, for based on what we've already talked about, like you want to get damage, and if you can get your damage in first, then your opponent's always going to feel on the back foot. A well-timed Bright Hope can obviously block a whole bunch of damage in space. That's obviously great in the mirror. But, meanwhile, yeah, you can also make your opponent kind of freak out when you drop a Dodonna. But again, considering like this isn't going to surprise people, I think in the future for like how this math will work, people will probably actually start playing around this. I think more often. Oh yeah, I'm not going to be able to surprise my opponents with 3 +1/+1/+1s and then a medal ceremony to just top it off.
Mm-hmm. All right, what do you guys feel about the Iden matchup? Iden or Krennic? Either of those two in blue green?
I think they're favorable. I mean, I know people are gonna, disagree and think that their Iden deck or Krennic deck is like 65% against Sabine, but like I completely disagree.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it's, it comes down to some tight play, but if you don't let them ramp, like they can't do anything. Like their deck is so slow and clunky. So you always want to go space against them. Like the blue-green decks have terrible space. Like they have Star Viper and that's it. So if they don't have Star Viper, or even like, yeah, but that doesn't kill anything. So it's just like, if you can keep going first, that'll shut off their Star Viper, just completely. But I don't think the matchup's that hard. The games you lose are the ones where they have multiple OB. But it's just basically just doing damage. You don't really care what they play. You're just always attacking them. They don't really have any like scary cards until like the Vader turn, basically. Childson's not even that scary as long as you know to hold the Spec Force.
There is also both John and I have the main deck Pathfinders, that with a Fleet Lieutenant or Heroic Sacrifice. That's just the auto kill on Iden. That's a pretty scary threat.
Did either of you?
We also have.
Did either of you run into Devotion on an Inferno 4 at this?
No, I didn't. I think that's such a niche 2-card combo that like it's very unlikely for them to have it when it matters. I think they play like 3 Inferno 4s and like maybe 2 Devotions. Like I think that's a fine game plan, like if that's their goal, but they have to have those exact 2 cards in their top 8 cards, or else it's just never happening, or it's way too slow for it to even matter.
All right. Want to say anything about Palp, that matchup?
No, I have nothing to say about the Palpatine matchup. That's like the easiest matchup on the planet. I know there was one guy there that was playing Palp. It might have actually been the guy who top 8'd.
Nick,
top 16. Yeah, Nick. Very nice guy, but
doing a masterclass with it. It looks like so.
I think that he had. Maybe he won like a Sabine matchup at some point, or maybe he won a couple against some players that might not have known what was going on. But you have to really mess up to lose to Palpatine, like, or they have to draw. Like,
Gotcha.
I feel like if they pick cards out of their deck every turn, they still can't win as long as you have like a normal draw. Like, they can't do anything. They don't have a leader. Like, it just doesn't matter.
I've played some Palpatine. Sabine feels horrific. It's not fun.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. What about the Blue Vader? I mean, I think we talked on this too. I mean,
Yeah, that's another matchup that's like very easy. Like they, once again, they have no leader, so that doesn't ever come into effect. I mean, if your leader ever does come into effect that like actually matter, you're probably going to lose. But the only card that ever matters is like Childson. And as long as you in your top like 12 cards of your deck have a Spec Force, like it's very difficult to lose. Like I played against George, and like I know that our matchup probably wasn't representative of his experience, but like I felt like there was never a situation where I was ever going to lose those games, just because I always had Spec Force, and there's nothing that he could do on those turns. Like he taps out to play Childson, and then you Spec Force it, and he takes like 7 damage. So
all right.
I don't think the matchup's that hard.
All right. What about Han Green? I mean, both of you referenced this as a challenge. So, what's your game plan into Han?
Michael, go ahead.
Cross my fingers.
What makes Han good against Sabine? Put it that way.
They just have, like, if they main deck Traitorous, they have the 3 Echo Base Defenders, they have the 3 Battlefield Marines. They can just trade and survive. That alone can be enough, like, for that early game plan. And then as soon as they get to that mid game plan, they can crush you with a Han deploy. It's one of the few cases where I legit feel that a resupply against an aggro deck can actually occasionally work, because you're like, here's a resupply, and then here's a Han leader immediately after. And then they can just take over the board, and then you can't necessarily always recover. It can just be a very hard matchup, just based on that alone.
Their turn 1 play can be a big problem for you too. Like if they have the hand where they're able to ramp turn 1 into like a Falcon or an Ezra, like it can be very difficult to do any meaningful damage through something like that.
A-Wing doesn't match up into like a turn 1 Millennium Falcon very well.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know, John, that you're an accomplished CCG player. I mean, Michael, great run. I mean, you had the top 4. I mean, you would have been the top Sabine in the tournament, too. So congratulations. This series is designed for people trying to like win a 1K, 5K, Worlds, Still Showdown. What advice do you have for actually preparing for a tournament? I mean, what works, what doesn't?
Yeah, there's not a lot that I could say that people probably don't already know, but for the newer people who are just trying to break in, like the number one thing is to just know your matchups.
Right.
Like have like an educated guess on what the meta is going to be or what's expected, and then know those matchups. Even if you don't actually physically get to play those matchups, there's plenty of content creators out there that make content that you can consume to learn play lines and things like that. Like if you put in the effort to learn what to do against what you expect to play against, then you'll probably do well.
There's a great video by Woo about like getting better, and one of like the pieces of feedback is being open, being adaptable. Big shout out to the KTOG Discord and those guys. Just the amount of gameplay you get to see from high level gameplay is like, if you can play against better players, that's awesome. If you can't play against them, but at least listen to them, like that helped me tremendously. It's really hard to beat getting to play or experience and understand like the reasons by which players are making decisions. So yeah, playing, it's hard to beat playing, but it's even better when you get to play or learn from people who are better than you.
Just watching. helps.
Yep. And you mentioned KTOD. I think those guys are great. I know Tatta, you're a looper like me, too, from even before that, too. But I mean, you gotta put in the work. You gotta do it, and don't play against the same people all the time. I mean, if you play against the same people all the time, you'll fall into play patterns.
Yeah, that's a big thing too. Is if you play against the same people all the time, it's hard to get better.
Right.
Just, like you said, you fall into those habits, but you always want to try to play as many games as possible against people that are better than you.
And I'd also say play your bad matchups. I mean, you're not going to win the tournament, by, face, washing Palpatine with your Sabine. You can do that already. Okay. I mean, it's probably the mirrors that make a big difference, and it's being able to take down a Boba or two.
Yeah,
Right.
well, I mean, even playing your good matchup still helps. Like, you do want to, like, even if Palpatine is a very good matchup for you, you still should play, like, at least 2, 3, 4 games against it just to know what to do. But,
And I also think it is. I mean, and the other point is, though, every deck has outs. I mean, Star Wars Unlimited is balanced enough. I mean, there was a week that Wu was trashing Chrono, who was a great Sabine player, with Palpatine.
Yeah.
And then Chrono adjusted, right? Because he figured out what the trick was.
Yeah.
Right. What do you think, Michael?
I mean, playing is good. Playing better people is great.
How many games did you play the 2 weeks before the tournament?
The 2 weeks before, I mean, I have no idea. I mean, I play quite a bit. I've been playing proxies since before the game launched. Like I go to locals multiple times a week. I'll also say I love playing on TTS, but nothing beats playing against other people. For better or for worse, people give away things more than they want to in person. That can be hard to pick up on when you're not used to playing against people in person, but you can, I think, absorb it over time. Like, obviously, people coming from more experienced, like who are more experienced from other TCGs or like poker, they're gonna be better at that than someone newer. But some people give tells on accident without meaning to.
I just want to say that I played 0 games in the 2 weeks before the tournament. I've been on vacation with my family for like the last few weeks, doing various things, and like I've been watching a lot, which helps, but I don't think I played like at all.
Well, there's that. There's always the exception to every rule. But I think in general, as you go, if you want to have good results, you should go. But I mean, you've played significant Star Wars Unlimited for 5-6 months with me, because I remember you winning a TTI, league a long time ago on Vader, actually, I believe, right? But
that was not me. I've only played TTI League once, and I lost in the top 4 or something, whatever it was. But yeah.
Anyway, day of the event itself. I mean, tips for actually, going through. Do either of you take notes?
Normally, yes. I'll be honest, like, for this tournament, I didn't take a pen and pad to life totals, notes, anything. Like, I was playing Sabine. I knew my games would be over quick one way or the other. Like, normally, yes, I would take notes. I would recommend taking notes. I would recommend keeping life on a pad with the, pen.
Yeah, you should absolutely do it on pen and paper if you can.
Yeah.
That being said, it's always a weird thing because technically in the rules you actually have to have actual counters.
Right.
So it's something to keep in mind. A lot of people were trying to like just have pen and pad. You really are supposed to do both. I have only ever used like tokens and counters going into before this tournament, so switching to doing both was kind of a pain because I would often update on the paper and then forget to update the tokens.
Yeah, I had a few opponents that were just doing pen and paper, and I would have to remind them to use counters as well, which was annoying, but I was pretty loose about it. So.
And I think it should be both. And then, I mean, depending on matchups, there may be some other things you want to track, on a note, too. There are decks that have such key cards that you might want to, pick down when it goes to discard. But
if you play something like Hyper Pro Droid, like, I would highly, always recommend taking notes.
Or if your opponent plays Child Sin, you might want to write down what they're revealing.
Yeah, what they reveal.
All right. Well, I think that wraps up the masterclass on Sabine Green. Any final words for the aspiring Green Bean?
Not really from me. I mean, like, the number one thing is you could copy one of our decks, or KTOD or whoever, but that's not going to help you if you don't play it. So, number one thing is to just find a deck that you like, play it as much as you can.
I would recommend not copying mine if you're not overly familiar with Sabine. I'm being honest. Like this was built for specific reasons, and some of those reasons worked out well for me. I would recommend having at least 2 Rebel Assaults, for instance.
I think somewhere between my deck and Michael's deck is probably where you want to settle. So.
Yeah, all right.
There you go. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for sharing your experience with everybody, and I hope to see you at events. And for everybody listening, I hope this video is helpful. And Loopy signing off.